Second stick. Okay.
Second sticks?
Mark it, please.
Take one.
Okay, we're back in Marks, Mississippi in March of
Look,
1968.
I'm sorry, you have to look at Paul, not the camera.
Oh yeah, always look at me, nobody else exists. We're back in Marks, 1968. What I want you to do
I'm
is...
afraid I have to cut for a second.
Okay.
Sorry.
Are you ready to seat me?
Yes,
Yeah,
See, the Head Start been ran by the establishment.
yeah.
It's totally ran by the local
Mhm.
people had control over it, and it really wasn't, they wasn't treating them right. So,
Doing a good interview too about this.
y'all wouldn't interview me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we interviewed her.
Would you like that back then too?
Oh, yeah, same, you know.
All right, we're not saying speed and power deciding to go ahead.
She was the same.
We will definitely
Raise-
be looking
raise
for
the
that
six
footage.
minute.
That'd be wonderful to be
And
able to put some
hit
of
it when
that
I tell
footage
you,
of her
okay.
on the film as well,
Uh-huh.
to make that connection.
Mark it, please.
Sound two?
So what I want you to do is to think back to that day in March of 1968 and to think it and what it felt like. I want you to paint us a word picture of what the mood was like. Were people excited about Dr. King coming to town?
Well, you know, at that time, Marks, particularly in Quitman County as a whole, Marks being the county seat, everybody was excited about Dr. King coming to see about us and our problems. We had been hollering in the wilderness for a long, long time, and it seemed that no one was listening to us. And with the various civil rights organizations having been working in Marks, COFO, SNCC, SCLC, and NAACP, and with the amount of problems we had had with the integrations of schools and the violent attacks on students, with individuals being thrown off plantations for exercising their right to vote. Yes, we were excited. You know, something that you can't hardly remember, but Dr. King's visit to Marks, it just started the adrenaline flowing in your body all over again, because we saw hope where we thought that there wasn't any hope. As a community, and for those of us who have been involved in the activities of the movement for the rights of people to express themselves, yeah, we were excited.
How did people think of Dr. King? Did they see him in some way when he came here?
Oh yes, people thinking of Dr. King when he came to Marks, and having known and heard about his courageous acts in Alabama, it was just truly a Moses coming home to see us and to lead us to that promised land of housing and better schools and jobs.
How'd your mom feel? I mean, she'd been active in the...
Well, she had been active, and she was totally excited. But certainly, you know, as the movie that we observed, Eyes on the Prize, she was that person. She kept her eyes on the prize, because opportunities and programs and federal grants that were not being sought after because of the local government not wanting to be involved with the federal government, and thereby federal government telling them what to do in their towns. She was an advocate of bringing in projects to uplift the downtrodden and the preschoolers and the homeless and the hungry. So yes, she was definitely excited, very outspoken, and she stayed that way until she was unable to go any longer.
Let's stop it down for a second.
Yes.
I want to make sure that everything's going all right.
Okay. I just want to put, can you just open the window for a second? I just want to put another
That was
layer.
very good.
Take three.
Mark it, please.
Okay, we've got a strong start. We'll go stronger here. We're back in Marks. Now, the people in Marks are glad to see King. Your mom's excited about King. You go to this meeting with your mother. You were a lot younger back then. And did you yourself buy Dr. King's program? Were you into nonviolence at that point? What do you think of his ideas and his programs?
I had been one point considering to become a part of the nonviolent movement, but being with SNCC and COFO and what have you, we felt that we had to be aggressive and that we would not stand for anybody to take our rights or deny our rights to us. But we respected and loved Dr. King, and we wanted to cooperate. And we felt that he had the kind of national political backing from churches and politicians and people in high places in government that would be an avenue that we could travel and get where we want to go. And of course, that's why we joined with NAACP and the nonviolent movement and the SCLC. And of course, we were very excited about this Poor People campaign that he spoke about. It's the first time that the concentration had been on poor peoples and their living conditions. And we wanted to be a part of that. That's what we had been working toward. We felt through voter registration that political power would bring economic power. And of course, and when Dr. King came to Marks and was so warmly received, and we were able to turn people out to hear him that had never been to a mass meeting before. So we were excited about that. A lot of work had been put into making preparation for Dr. King to come to Marks. And we were just excited, and we were glad that people showed up.
What did he talk about? What was he like that day?
Oh, he was just like a shining star to us. He let us know that there was hope, not to give up. And spiritually, he filled our hearts with the attitude that all we had to do is just go with him and march with him around Washington, D.C., around the United States Department of Agriculture, around those areas, housing, just around those various agencies that could make a difference in our lives. And we were ready to go.
Would you have gone any place he said?
Oh, any place. I believe that, I said to some of my friends, I believe if he had led us to that Red Sea and the water had been there, we would have walked in the water with him, because that's the kind of hope that he had instilled in us. And his supporters, Andrew Young and Jose Williams, and all of those people had given us the kind of assurance that we needed, that we wouldn't be arrested, that we wouldn't be bodily harmed, and that the shacks that we were living in here in Marks, Mississippi, will one day be brick homes, and that the outer houses that we had will one day become closed-in bathroom with hot running water. And that was American dream for us. And we want to share the dream that Dr. King dreamed about.
Want to stop it down for a second? That was great. It was really nice.
We have 100 feet left from this room.
Okay. I want to take you into
Okay, let's hold on for a second. Mark it, please.
Sound 4?
Okay, Resurrection City. I mean, there you are. You're up from Marks, Mississippi. It's May 1968. Again, a word picture. What was it like? What was it like being there? What did you see?
Well, in Resurrection City, I was not as excited that I had been when Dr. King came. Matter of fact, I almost didn't go because I was scheduled to drive the mule that my brother drove to Atlanta before they loaded up the mules on the train. But consciously had made a commitment to Dr. King in Marks at that church that we would go to Resurrection City. And since he had been assassinated, and we felt obligated to go, so we went to Resurrection City to keep a promise to Dr. King, to tell the world of our problems. We got there. We were excited about the tents. Most of the women's and the elder people were put in other areas, and those of us who could weather the weather, and we were in the tent, and it was a coming together of all races of people who were poor and who had concerns for those of us who were poor. And it was exciting, and we were there for 2 weeks, and things was going well. We would meet somewhere between 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, in various sessions, and with the different agency of federal government that we felt that could hear our cry, and waiting on the instructions of the leaders of the Resurrection City, Dr. Abernathy, lieutenants, waiting on instruction of them where to move from one place to another one to testify before the various committees about the conditions and what have you. And we enjoyed it. It was fun. We were there for business, but we mixed a little fun into it. Meeting people from New York and California and Detroit. It was exciting, and the American Indians and the Chicanos and Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, people of all minority backgrounds were there. We were excited, and we felt that once we left Resurrection City, that we had gotten the attention of those who we elected in this country to make sure that those of us who were from Marks and other parts of the country would be given a fair share of the American dream that Dr. King talked about.
Okay, now you told me.
We just ran out of minutes,
Okay.
2 seconds after you said that. It's very nice.
I'm gonna let them load another camera roll, and we'll go back to Mark's.
Okay.
Not Mark's, but no, back to Resurrection City.
Okay.
Do it around.
I was
Okay.
the same thing.
Okay, ready?
Putting up the.
Oh,
In terms of perspiration, you're doing much better than
Color
Eddie
chart.
Young. Eddie Young was sprouting water, so.
Color charted, please.
It was one of the first interviews you're doing, we're trying to figure out how to tell the mayor of Atlanta to pat himself down.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even that hot outside, I think it was January or December. We were using hotter lights back then.
He was, he had his own, powder puff.
So he did.
Yes.
Yeah, in his pocket.
Do you remember Jesse Jackson from back then?
Yeah.
Was he pretty visible at Resurrection City?
Not much.
Yeah.
No, not much.
As they're doing this, there's something I didn't ask you. Are there any stories about, something that happened in the first couple of days, or that give a sense of the
I've
feeling
been
of
on
being
TikTok.
someplace new and things that just comes to mind at all?
Oh,
What your
yes.
feeling was like when you first got there? and things?
Scared as hell.
Really?
Yeah.
Can we roll?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Hold that feeling and I'll start with that.
Slater, please.
I'm good on this. Go ahead.
Marky, please.
5.
So let me know what it felt like when you got there. I mean, stories or what it was like to be there.
Well, first when we got to Resurrection City, quite frankly, we were scared as hell. Being in Washington, D.C., and being out on the U.S. government turf and not being authorized to be there. And of course, we had got used to being places that we wasn't supposed to be. But, you couldn't help but think that if something happened, Dr. King is not here. And we knew that if he had been there, you'd been a little bit more relaxed. Didn't quite have as much confidence with Dr. King not being with us. And of course, but we had a determination to go on anyway. And meeting strangers, and a lot of people at the Resurrection City wasn't there for freedom. A lot of people that came to Resurrection City in Washington, D.C. was just there out of curiosity, and my own people. They were just out of curiosity, and they had other alternatives being there. And because even though you were there together, you still had to watch those few who wasn't there about the business. And you couldn't help think about the Memphis situation with Dr. King and the march that he for the sanitation workers and those who were planted in the sanitation workers march to disrupt that march. And you couldn't help think about where are they? You knew they were there somewhere. Just because Dr. King was gone, but this still was one of his objectives, was to bring poor people together. And the powers to be didn't want poor people together because it exposed America for what it really was. Had forgotten about those who had built it on the sweats and tears and lives. And we were always watching, even though we were being advised by people who were much older than we were, how to conduct ourselves, how to behave and what have you. But after a couple of days, 3 days there, you got the feeling that you had a job to do there, and whatever you was asked to do, you would do it. And that's sort of the general attitude we had. Whatever little part that we could play as a group individually, and as a group we would do it.
Now, some people, when they look back on Resurrection City, I mean, for a lot of people, they just think it didn't work out very well. But you said it had a good start. I mean, what happened? How come?
Well, I think it had a good start because the intent, purpose of us going out was to tell Congress, tell the Senate, and tell the elected peoples in the highest office in the United States that the check that King talked about in August, it still needed to be drawn on, and we were still suffering. That's what those of us from Marks, Mississippi, was there for. And somewhere in Resurrection City, that message just wasn't carried out to the end. As I look from the hindsight, it might have been the communications between the various group leaders and the team leaders. Could have been a breakdown there, too much downtime between there. And we began to scatter somewhat. We would go from the tent city to down in the city, loitering around and what have you, rather than we were supposed to stay in the tent city. Our purpose there was to give to those elected officials our concerns. And of course, and at the end, with all the rain and mud and the policemen being discharged on us, and we sort of scattered ourselves. And but the purpose in which we went, I think, was accomplished. As to how long we should have stayed, I still question that. Maybe we should have went in and did our testimonies and demonstrations and got out of there. Maybe we might stay too long. I'm not sure. I guess that'll never be known. But our purpose for going there, the exposure, the conditions of poor people up front to those who vote on legislation dealing with the livelihoods of peoples in this country. I think we made our presence known.
That's a good thing in terms of the overall campaign. I want to get you feeling, what you were feeling at that time, let's say after the first half of week or whatever. I mean, you said there was a different feeling that you had over time, that it seemed like when you first came there were things, and then something happened. Can you get me from the first day to after something happened, and what you think was happening, or what you were feeling at that time that there was an absence of?
Well, I felt at the time that we were in Resurrection City that the absence was we were not consistent enough with our programs on a day-to-day basis, and after a period of several days, that began to have too much lax time in between for our team leader. From the overall perspective, we just did not have. After the first 7 days, we did not have an agenda that we were required to be about for a full day. And with that many people being there, lax time should have been a no-no. But as I look from the hindsight on it, that's basically what I felt, that many of us wasn't doing what we should have been doing, because our team leader did not provide us with that kind of leadership.
Was SCLC well organized for this campaign?
I think so. I think for the first time, as a commitment to Dr. King, and wanted to make sure that what he had started would be successful, that a lot of the bickering and stuff that normally go on had ceased. And they wanted to put their arms around the Reverend Abernathy. And I think the other groups, civil rights groups, for the sake of Dr. King, in the Poor People's Campaign, we wanted to make sure that they give SCLC all of the assistance that they need to give them.
Do you think that there were
Ralph President, I believe, Stokely.
still president?
Watch out, it's close
Yeah,
hands.
Ralph took over after Stokely.
Was SNCC functioning very much at that point in time here?
Yeah, see, SNCC
Mm-hmm.
provided the resources.
Mm-hmm.
LCLC came in on the tail end,
Yeah.
and of course NACP had always been here,
Sure.
right? The granddaddy organization has always been here,
And everybody was tied together with COFO at that point.
right?
Okay.
So we're gonna do a couple of wrap-up questions on Resurrection City.
Okay. Slate in, please.
Home stretch.
This is take 6.
Mark it, please.
Put your hand on the towel.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
People came into Resurrection City with a lot of energy, and I think most people would agree that a lot of things were accomplished in terms of
Can
people's,
you move your body a little bit towards this way? Yeah, a little more. Fine.
in terms of people seeing the poor. When you were in Resurrection City and people were trying to understand why the agenda wasn't being as clear, did anybody talk about just the communication from the leadership to the people in Resurrection City, or the communication that was coming within SCLC? Was there any understanding of what was going on at the time?
No, that's what I felt in Resurrection City at the time, that when I spoke early on about the agenda not being consistent, our team leaders from our state and our particular area would not have, at some point, would not have any communication to us. And until we see such communication, then we would just be loitering around and what have you. And we did not question that non-communication to us. We felt from the Reverend Abernathy and his team leaders that at the appropriate time they would advise. Not being familiar with the strategies in which the team captains and Reverend Abernathy was involved in. So we just didn't know what was going on. And of course we had to try to be as patient as we could and just wait until, because we felt that something should have been happening. Naturally, we had questions in our mind, but as far as us really pursuing that, we did not. We just waited, you know. We would just, whatever we were told, we would do, and we would wait to do. So we just did not question the lack of communication to us.
Did you feel like things were going downhill?
Honestly, yes, I felt there's something, you really got the feeling that things were beginning to go downhill and that you had reached the peak there, and that it was time to go. You know, nothing new was exciting, nothing that you could look forward to the next day that we're going to be in front of the Justice Department raising hell. You couldn't look forward to the next day we're going to be at some congressman's office raising hell with the congressman about his voting record, you know. So none of that excitement kinds of stuff that, you know, that we wanted at my age at that time, you know, wanted to go on. It wasn't going on. And it became various disagreement within Resurrection City with some of the various groups. You know, you had because we hear a lot about gangs today, but you had gangs from New York, Chicago, and California in Resurrection City at that time. And of course, they were being monitored. And we had a little disturbance, but nothing to the point that the press would get hold to, because they would do a job on it. You just kept, if there was some disturbance among those of us who were there, we just kept it among ourselves. But in terms of being aggressive from 10 to 5 each day after the first several days, and that began to go downhill, and many of us felt there was time to pack up. And of course, I guess that was one of the things that scared us. Now we've been here, now we're going to return, and what's going to happen? And that really, when you got ready to get out of Resurrection City, many of us felt that we should go a different direction than come back home, because you knew what was going to happen. You sort of felt that you were going to meet all kinds of repercussions from the establishment.
Why don't we stop for there for 1 second? Yeah, why don't you and I go out on the porch for 1 second, just to cool. You know, I was. Were you 18 years old then?
I was 19.
19.
Mm-hmm.
I was 19 years old when Dr. King came to Marks that day.
Do you want me to say my name or just say I was 19?
No,
Just
yes.
I was.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're ready.
Okay, I was 19 years old when Dr. King came to Marks to organize the Poor People Campaign.
That's it.
Why don't you do that once more?
I was 19 years old when Dr. King came to Marks, Mississippi, to organize the Poor People's Campaign.
And one more line, just to say that where you were living in Resurrection City.
Uh,
Hold on, we've got this shortcut.
I lived in Resurrection City, in Tent City, part of Resurrection City, perhaps in the middle of it. There were many tents, hundreds of tents set up there.
So you were living in a tent.
Right.
So
I was living in a tent there at Resurrection City. About 10 more than the tent was supposed to hold in the first place. So that's where we were then.
that's fine.
Can we do it that once more?
Sure. I was living in a tent. And
I was living in a tent.
I would have to ask you if you could wait after Paul talks. Wait another couple seconds and then speak, okay?
I was living in a tent in Resurrection City, perhaps in the middle of the whole tent city of Resurrection City, during the Poor People's Campaign March.